Thank you for joining us for today's Roads to Research presentation. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Royal Roads University rests upon the ancestral lands of the Quatsapsum, Esquimalt, and Kwanghan Songhees nations. And I would like to play a welcome from Chief Ron Sam.
I am Ron Sam, elected Chief of Songhees Nation. I want to acknowledge that Royal Roads University rests upon the ancestral lands of Kosamson and Lekwungen families, now known as the Esquimalt and Songhees peoples. Our ancestors once resided on the shores where Snukwa Ilung, the Blue Heron House, is located now. That's where our families gathered and harvested off the land. We welcomed guests and hosted them with great respect. As you begin your day, take a moment to acknowledge the rich history this land has. Haishka Siyam.
Today, we're pleased to welcome Drs. Eva Malisius, Charles Krusekopf, Kathy Bishop, Catherine Etmanski, and Beth Page, who have all made chapter contributions to the book, The Disruptive Power of Online Education. This event is supported by the Canadian Tri-Agency Research Support Fund, and please be aware that it is being recorded, and there'll be some time for questions at the end. Thank you. Over to you.
Hello, welcome. So I've been selected as the first speaker, partly because I just spent the year at our partner University Management Center Innsbruck, which is the origin of this project. So they sent around an email request looking for submissions for chapters for this book on the disruptive power of online education, because MCI is our partner because they have been adding online elements into their programs. And I thought, well, what a great way to sort of build the cooperation between MCI and Royal Roads by soliciting chapters from different people at Royal Roads. And there are actually a number of people submitted chapters. And so we ended up with 3 chapters in the book. I think we spoke briefly about it was a long road to producing these books. It's a long road. I had 2 chapters originally and rewrote them several times, partly because they kept seemingly changing what they were asking for in the book, which made it a little bit difficult. And I know Mike Thompson had a chapter that he was working on, and it finally dropped out because too many things changing. So we ended up doing this. The editors are all from MCI, and Andres Altman is the rector of MCI, and Bernd and Claudia are professors there, and Desiree works there as well. So this is the book, and there's copies of it being passed around by Emerald Publishing. And there's 10 different chapters, and as you see, there's 3 of the chapters, and that's what we're going to cover today. 3 of the 10 chapters were by Royal Roads authors. And so just briefly about our partnership with MCI, everyone is welcome to go visit. It's not a bad location. This is our MGM blended class with Hassan. When I was teaching there, they came over, and this is on the deck of the university looking out on the Nordkette on the mountains there. This is the campus in Innsbruck. So we have this double degree partnership that I'll talk about between MGM and their blended MBA. There have been a number of MCI students visiting, and I know we have a couple of MCI students in MGM right now for 1 semester. This really was pioneered by Tourism and Hospitality because they had the first faculty and student exchanges, and I think there's been regular students coming into the tourism program and our students going over there as well, because they have quite a good tourism school. I have, and you'll probably hear more about it, we'll do some events. We have 34 students coming from MCI on a study tour that we're going to be a week in Vancouver and a week here in Victoria in May. And then I was a visiting faculty member there. I keep intending to do a presentation about both being a visiting faculty member and then the how we set that up and a lot of the different challenges. It's a whole interesting, I think, story about spending a year abroad, especially with your family. And my kids went to school there and everything you have to think about. But I welcome anyone who's interested in doing that at MCI or another school. I'm happy to talk with you about that whole process of going abroad and being a visiting faculty. And I was full-time faculty member at Royal Roads as well while I was there. And we can talk about that pros and cons, 2 jobs, but you get to maintain your Canadian status as well. So my chapter really evolved out of this partnership we have that got established because MCI was creating an online blended MBA program, and they were looking for a partner to think about creating a double degree, a dual degree program with their MBA blended program. And we said, perfect, we are creating our MGM blended program at the same time. Let's create a double degree that's a blended to blended master's program. And as far as I can tell, and I have looked and looked and looked, and if anyone knows of one, tell me, but this is the first one that I know of in the world. And as I looked into this, and I'm glad they kept pushing me on the chapter, because at first the chapter was more just descriptive about the program and some of the aspects of the program, but they kept pushing me saying, okay, how can we generalize this? How can we talk about it? And it made me read a lot more about cross-border online education. And the first thing you learn when you start looking at that is there is virtually no cross-border online education, which is interesting. We all think of the internet and the possibilities, but less than 1% of students actually enroll in a course online for an institution that's outside their home country. And there's lots of reasons for that. There's barriers, there's language barriers, there's barriers to recognition and other things. But you know, the MBA program here that I'm working with now, we've had one international student in the last couple of years that I know of. All the rest of the students are domestic students. People don't enroll in these cross-border things. And looking at the other piece that I looked at a lot was internationalization strategies for universities, and the fact that this online component is not usually included, and most internationalization strategies are around, okay, go do a semester abroad, different kinds of exchanges that really exclude our students at Royal Roads. And I struggled a long time thinking about how can we include our students in their working environments, blended students in international education. So my idea was, let's create this dual double degree for blended to blended. And the way the structure works is basically the students in our blended MGM, this is optional program. They pay a bit more in tuition to do the 2 degrees. I won't go too much into all the details there, but basically they do our first residency, they do online classes, and then they go do the residency at the partner university, and then do online classes for a year with the partner university. They write a thesis, and they have fulfilled the requirements, about 75% of the requirements for both institutions, and what they haven't done at the home institution, they've done abroad, and they transfer the credits back. They get the Royal Roads degree, they get the MCI degree. And so then we have students coming. We've had more students go abroad, so we've had about 5 students each year from our cohort of 20, so it's quite a significant group who've been going to MCI and doing their program. And we just had 2 students from MCI come to Royal Roads to do the MGM, to start the MGM process. So we've had a few over the years from MCI as well. So this partnership, I say, has a number of advantages, and it really allows students who are in these blended programs a way to gain exposure to international education in a sustained way that they otherwise wouldn't be able to access. So they're all working full-time. They can't spend a long period of time abroad. I take students on short study tours, but one of the big advantages of this is it's not just a 1-week study tour abroad or a short-term exchange with another university. It's that the students actually enroll in a program and have to take a program with the students of the foreign university. And first there's the whole cultural process of enrolling and being in that university. And then there's the classes, the teachers, the learning at the other university is a international experience that they otherwise wouldn't do. And they can do it, most of it, from home in Canada. Within the programs, it adds advantages because it adds new courses. You can offer basically new specializations by targeting who you partner with, new options. As I say, our students, down here, it's in terms of recruitment, it's one of the main reasons students come in our program because they say, wow, well, this is really interesting. I can do both degrees. This is something I'm looking at and thinking about before I even come in the MGM. All the students gain by having the 2 international students come into our MGM cohort. It adds a whole new element for everyone in the cohort, right? Having the 5 Canadian students in the MCI program adds something new for them. So it's something that everyone in the program, it's not just the students who participate. This piece on the 21st century learning, I think, is really, really important around, I hear from employers and they talk about, that so you're BMW and you have a plant in South Carolina and you have a design team that may be in China or in India or in Bavaria, and we're trying to figure out how can we get all of these people working together online as teams on projects. And I think that's something that Royal Roads hasn't explored enough, to think about how we have some expertise in team building, we have expertise in online education. How can we deliberately partner with international companies and institutions to emphasize that as a key skill in the global marketplace today? So working cross-border, online, and in person. Administratively, it's relatively easy for the program because you're not doing anything different. You're just offering your program and you have new students coming in. And then something that we've talked about, I found it a little bit harder to find partner institutions. If you have some ideas, we're interested in thinking about this. But this could be a consortium. You could have different options. One option could be a certain type of specialization to go to Innsbruck. Another one could be going to Latin America, to Africa, to different partners in different places. We just would need to find the institutions offering programs that are relatively similar in a blended formats. So I'm interested in exploring, so if you have some ideas for your program or other areas in Royal Roads thinking about this, and ways that we can build a bigger consortium. I think it could be a really interesting international consortium that we could build across these blended dual degrees. So, thank you. I have a poster that I took to a conference in Europe here with a bit more information, and I'm happy to talk with anyone about it further. So that's my chapter. You can read the whole chapter as well. I'm happy to send it. Pardon? I think questions at the end. Huh? Okay. Who's our next? I will just turn it over.
I won't be confined to the podium. So welcome. Thank you so much for your participation and attendance this afternoon and your interest. Thank you to Charles in particular for getting us organized and for promoting this book. And as he said, there are a few copies of the book around. There's one here if anyone wants to take a look. So Kathy and I, together with our colleague Dr. Beth Page, who's one of our associate faculty members, whom many of you know, you're nodding your heads, I can see, co-authored a chapter. And we, unfortunately, Beth is not able to be here with us today, so acknowledgements to you, Beth, and thank you for your contributions. And we understand that Noah will be stepping in Beth's place. Just to get us started here, I'd like to ask you what you see in this photo. And first of all, let me say I acknowledge it's a bit blurry. That's okay, that's part of what you see. So anything that you see, and just shout it out a little bit here. I'll repeat it so that the sound is loud enough. What do you see? Pea on snow. Okay? Resilience. By accident. Oh, a bike accident. A bike accident. Okay. A beautiful flower. Determination. Hope. Thank you. Anything else? Growth in an unusual place. There's a crack in everything, as Leonard Cohen sang. Yes, yes. A handprint. A handprint, yes. Anything else? So our chapter, if I'm remembering correctly, is called Engagement in Online Learning, it's not all about faculty, exclamation mark. And we're curious about not only the role that faculty play, but also the role that students themselves play in supporting an engaged online environment. So given that here at Royal Roads University, we have a learning, teaching, and research model that promotes an engaged approach to learning and teaching and research, given what you've just told me that you see in this photo, there's a crack in everything, pee on snow, a handprint, a bike accident, resilience, hope. So, you all heard many of the other ones. Welcome, hello. Come on in. I'd like you to think for a moment about your role, your particular role in the university in engaging students in online learning. And then with that lens, symbolically, how might some of the things that you've now said, that you've articulated that you see here, how does that apply to how we engage our students in online learning here? Some of them may apply more than others, eh, Leslie? What does resilience or determination, for example, for some of our learners mean in an online environment? Work-life study balance. Yes, many adult learners who are trying to figure out, and including the life, they're trying to figure out how to be parents, how to work, how to be engaged in their online classrooms all at the same time. That takes a lot of perseverance, determination, and a little bit of hope and faith in there too, that they're actually going to be able to do it. What about there's a crack in everything? What does that mean? Do our students fall through the cracks sometimes? And who's the community that helps to make sure that they don't? It's not only us, is it? It's the cohort model that we draw from as well. The students make relationships with one another. Of course, we have wonderful student services, wonderful program staff. Many, many of us are working, and yet it's the relationships with one another that help as well, isn't it? Anything else? Any other symbolic connections? Yes, Pedro.
Using hope, it doesn't matter how hard it might look, there's always a way.
It doesn't, yes. It doesn't matter how hard it might look. When they first open that Moodle site and they say, oh my goodness, what does this even mean as a learning environment? There's a bit of hope there that they're going to be able to get through. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, there is a really steep learning curve. They always are finding it challenging at the very beginning, but they really do blossom. And I love that when they write back and say they made it. They're so happy.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, there's a steep learning curve at the outset, but many of them do make it, the majority of them do make it, and they really start to blossom, and we get to witness that and hear their feedback when they write back to us at the end. Lovely, yes, yes. Anything else? A bike accident. Accidents happen sometimes, right? What else, Teresa?
I was just thinking about the cracks appearing, and students often have plans for how their programs are going to go, and at some point there's going to be a crack. And kind of normalizing that for students and saying it's okay that it's cracking. That's supposed to happen, and then that's where the learning and the growth happens after that.
Yes, exactly. So just to reiterate, students have a plan, they think they've got their lives organized, they come in, and then the cracks start to appear. And you do such a beautiful job with your imposter syndrome video or audio recording, for example, just to normalize that for students so they understand it's normal, life happens, it's okay, you've got a community of support here. Yes, Leslie.
This is also a crack in post-secondary education. And it's a crack that our students can climb through and obtain degrees when normally they couldn't, because they couldn't attend the university full-time because of familial or community obligations.
Beautiful, yes. So a crack in post-secondary education in general that, in a sense, we're filling here at Royal Roads or with other online universities because we allow access to post-secondary to students who wouldn't otherwise have access. That's great. Thank you so much. One more, or is that enough to sort of get a sense of where we're going here? Yes, Niels, of course.
So this is actually beauty among what looks like potentially a very arid, unhospitable plain.
Beauty in an arid, unhospitable plain,
Right.
yes.
But-
And how does that relate to learning?
Well, because I think for the plant that's actually made it its home, our students similarly make what it potentially initially seems like totally formidable into something that they thrive in.
Yes. So students can convert this environment into something that they thrive in, just as the flower did. Thank you so much, Niels. Beautiful, wonderful comments. And there are probably just as many interpretations as there are of us in the room, and we probably could brainstorm multiple interpretations for all of us. Hi. So my intention here in opening with this, or our joint intention between Kathy and I, and also Beth Page, is to demonstrate a couple of things. One, because of the title of our chapter, we're wanting to demonstrate that part of the disruption that we're creating in an online learning setting is that many students come in with that top-down, instructor-centric mentality about learning. And so part of what we do, what all of us in this room do at Royal Roads, is we have to start to unpack that a little bit and demonstrate that, yes, of course we want to hire faculty and associate faculty who have expert knowledge, who have content knowledge. But we're not the only ones with knowledge. And just as in this setting, you know, when Kathy and I were speaking in advance to organize this, we know what we wrote in our chapter will be familiar to all of you because we all work in this environment. So just as we've elicited your knowledge here, that is a strategy, of course, that we can start to teach our students. It's not only about faculty. And in addition to that, because we're dealing with adult learners who come in with all kinds of expertise, as many of you know, one of the principles of adult learning is to find out what people know and to bring their knowledge to bear in the classroom. And of course, that's part of our strategy at Royal Roads University. And in addition to that, what our chapter speaks about in particular, and what Kathy will expand upon a little bit here, is that with us specifically, we're curious about these creative methods, like this simple photo. How can we invite people to participate and engage in a way that isn't only through discussion forums and words? Can we invite people to think creatively or symbolically? We're going to have a beautiful example through Eva when she comes back as well about videos, many, many different ways that we can engage people beyond simply the written word. And so those are a few introductory comments. I'll pass it over to my friend and colleague here, Kathy Bishop.
Great. So sort of continuing on with Catherine, around creativity. MacLeod talks about that there's different ways of knowing. And so, you know, one of them is through text, but other ways of knowing is through visuals, through images, through sound. And as a result, this is how, yeah, sound perfect, on cue, as Beth is being channeled through Noah, is a way to sort of go deeper with that then is to invite students with that creativity. And so in our chapter, as you heard from our title, you know, there's disruption in there, there's engagement in there. So you'll see that we've weaved in the concepts of not only disruption and engagement, but also communities of belonging, and also having omnidirectional mentorship. And so looking at how we can sort of engage students creatively that way. And so we offer engagement strategies through some of the foundations that we all know here in the room because of the learning and teaching model, where we have 4 specifically, which is weekly forums. So everybody sort of knows those weekly forums. And in those weekly forums, we'll use different types to elicit different things. Now there is, as Catherine said, we'll post maybe a photograph and ask students to sort of comment on that photograph. But it doesn't stop at photographs. They can also, you know, do tweets or poems, but we'll really ask them to sort of expand on their learning and to capture it so that they can give this to other students in that way. With other types of forums that we'll also use is a Q&A form. And what's great about this, just having a question and answer form, is this is a way that students can post any questions that they have. And it's just sort of open anytime that they have it. But what we found is that often students will respond to each other before faculty necessarily gets to it, which reinforces the idea of omnidirectional mentorship and also the feeling of belonging, because in this way, students say, oh, I had that question, but I didn't want to ask it, or I was thinking that too. And so they all have this sort of immediate connection in terms of that. Another forum that we use within the MA Leadership Program is a learning community forum. And that forum is sort of an informal community where people can share their own learning. And so in that process, students will post whatever they would like to do. So it's not all about faculty, and yet faculty still has a role. And so often I will engage in that faculty forum for our first residency students right off the bat, and I'll post a video, Derek Redmond's video. Have people ever seen Derek Redmond's video? Well, hold on to your seats, because you're going to see it in just a moment. And the reason why I do that is I want to make explicit some of the things that we know behind the scenes or that are implicit. And in this way, we often tell the students to trust the process, and yet it's really important sometimes for them to understand the process. So when I talk about my role as a faculty member for them, again, to sort of disrupt some of those common conceptions that they have, I talk about how I wait in the wings, you know, that I'm present, I'm here, and this is about us cultivating a community. And so what I'll do is I'll show this video, and then I'll ask the question, what does this say about me as a faculty member if you watch it with that view? So, Vanessa, if you could just...
When troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. When I am on your shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be.
What they don't show at the end of that video is actually just before they get to the finish line, the father lets go of him, and and lets him cross on his own. Oh, it just always moves me, this video. And I think what's really important about this is to sort of, again, with an embodied sort of approach on a thinking, feeling, and doing level with our students, and being able to sort of pull and draw them in from a virtual space becomes really powerful. And it just opens us to have these dialogues that's fully arranged, and I'll center those through leadership competencies in terms of, supporting each other. When do we let go? When do we come through? When as leaders do we say, and break through barriers? And so the dialogue just fosters that and enables us to disrupt. So you can read the chapter further. It gives the example of that. It speaks deeper in terms of the other areas where we talk about in terms of assignments and how we engage with teams in that way, as well as through synchronous meetings, and then also that faculty may not be out front, but we're behind the scenes, so we don't just sort of let people go, which is really quite an important and powerful place in terms of what we're doing and the work that we're doing with students. So at this point, Catherine, do you have a last moment that you'd like to fill up? No? Okay, well then that, I think, runs our time out. But, yeah. And now we'll give it over to Ava.
Thank you. And yes, the things we do to our kids or something. So we thought a lot about which order to speak, and I think the flow might make more sense once I've spoken. I think one of the common threads that all of us have is looking at community and how the disruptive power of online education still can manage to create that community. One of the first things I was surprised at in the first course that I taught here was students at the end of their program who still said, oh, I prefer face-to-face so much more than online. So even at the end, that's always a theme. I don't have the clicker to change. Thank you. Yes, we've had the welcome of the traditional lens that you did, and part of why I left this slide in there is, to me, and not being from Canada, in the beginning, it took me a while to figure out what this all means and how it fits into this. And hearing Asma say the other day, people sometimes criticize that she takes too much time doing these when she welcomes and opens things. And at the same time, it always is that great moment to just pause and reflect and think about what we do and where we do it and how we do it. So in that sense, in addition to the meaning it has on its own, it also factors into this. So part of how my chapter came about, and some of you might have heard me in other forums talk about video assignments and how to do that, and that's part of where this road to research has led me to continue to look into what more can we do with that, and how do you go from disruptive being troublesome to more being in that space of unconventional and innovative, and look at the location-dependent learning, the asynchronous engagement, some of the community parts that Kathy and Catherine also spoke about, and some of the things that you can do while they're just taking their course, while students are just studying. So when I wrote this, we were still on the LTM, and it fit nicely into that, but I actually think it fits even better into the LTRM, including elements like the transformational, the caring community-based parts, the applied and authentic part for sure, and one of my favorites, the reflective practice element as well, because, and I think I might have not mentioned at the beginning that I'm talking about digital storytelling as an assignment format, and how that can do all of these things, and I'll show how. So part of how that started off was looking at what actually makes a good assignment and how can you have an assignment that is somewhat different. The task or opportunity that I had was creating an assignment for the first course the students take in our program, and trying to do all of these things that all of us talked about. How do you create that community when they're in different places? Even in our normal program, so to speak, we often have one or two students who are somewhere else around the world, or who might be traveling, who might be posted somewhere, and they still make all of that work. So mapping all of that out then became a video assignment, but then it became more, because in some ways just doing a video assignment felt like, that's just technology, and putting that in there, but thinking through how to do it with the care, accountability, and creativity part. So providing resources and support so that technology doesn't become the disruptive part, but that it goes to that place of innovation. And we have resource guides, we have computer services always commenting and getting a lot of questions as well. So it takes a lot of support around that. Similar to what Kathy mentioned, the Q&A forum, where the students are much faster to respond and commiserate than an instructor could ever be, unless you live 24/7 on there. The accountability part, though, at the same time, making sure that it still is an academic assignment and does all of that, and I'll come to that, why digital storytelling has an extra factor there. And having open-ended questions to allow for that space of creativity, so the students do what they do. And all of these assignments are always very, very different in the outcome. So these are some parts of what I talk about in the chapter. It's actually more than a voiceover presentation or a video, because it uses video technology to generate a cohesive narrative in a compelling manner. And the students are transferring their quiet knowledge on a particular topic in an audiovisual narration, requiring critical thinking and analysis, which is, again, more similar to what academic writing would be. With that, rather than being disruptive, it becomes actually integrative and invites collaboration, dialogue beyond the classroom. Designing the assignment, it becomes, in some ways, no different than any other assignment. So students are required to apply the course readings and concepts, at the same time increase their multimedia literacy, which becomes a soft skill that translates to the workplace. It supports that collaborative and engaged learning environment, both for sort of the troubleshooting, and even more so, though, for actually looking at each other's products. How did others meet this challenge, this assignment? What did they talk about? A lot of my assignments are obviously around conflict. You learn about conflicts you haven't heard about, or you might learn about a conflict that feels very close to some of the conflicts that you know yourself and are around. And through that, it actually increases the social presence, the teaching presence, faculty is there as well, and the cognitive presence of engaging with the materials more. And really, it becomes that applied learning through the increased accessibility. You're not going to read someone else's paper, but you will watch someone else's video. Your colleagues are not going to read your paper, or your family, but you can show grandma your digital story, and thereby the community of learning also becomes larger and more engaged in that. So in that sense, it also contributes to a safe learning environment, creating that reflective practice, the cohort building, the community building, even if it's just for a course. It does allow to contribute to that. There's different kinds of interactions between the students and the instructor, and it can increase the satisfaction of that online learning experience. Okay, because yes, you have more of that presence as well. So I guess that means I have to hurry up. So I talk about two different examples in the chapter. One is in the conflict analysis and management program, and again, it has quite evolved from the first couple of times that I've talked about it, because at the time it was really more an experiment. Don't tell the students that. And then it was very much in collaboration with my CTED ID at the time, Amanda Coolidge. And then it sort of evolved into being much more deliberate and planned out. So the assignment itself has changed, and I've moved to the digital storytelling format as well. The students still provide that mixture of personal background to speaking to their motivation. The content knowledge, the deadline is 2 weeks into their program, so they haven't really read a lot, but what they know at that point. And then addressing their expectations for the program. So in that sense, I'm blending sort of an introduction element as well, again, feeding into the cohort building, to that academic element of writing your first paper, first assignment. And there's that element of disruption as well. Some of our, or many of our students take the academic writing course and they feel all ready to write a paper and then they have to do a video. So again, all of these things sort of help shaking things up and sort of stretching the comfort zone without dropping too much on there. I also do a similar assignment in a global leadership course that I teach. That there it's not at the beginning, but throughout the program they're already encouraged using other formats. So, and here it's optional for them to do. They don't usually hesitate as much. And I've noticed putting the presentation together since writing this, I've also moved on to actually making it part of their team assignment and the presentation that they do. So they identify a community in conflict and come up with options of addressing that. And as their team assignment, they pull together a clip that they could show the community to outline what their challenges are and how they're proposing to work with them. They've done anything from trying to convince, I think it was Calgary, to get an NHL team, to working with child soldiers, working with drug addiction, and a city organizing volunteers. So even as a team assignment, it can work. I thought that would mean one person does the clip, and it actually doesn't. So they find different ways of collaborating in that as well. So that's kind of the summary. I notice I am running out of time too. So it really looks at the element of presence, the learning, engagement, and retention as well. Even for myself, I might not remember a face necessarily of a student, but I will often remember the sense of their video clip or digital conflict story or sort of something they shared within that. So in that sense, on the one hand, it's disruptive. On the other hand, it's actually quite long-lasting and goes into that element of transformative teaching and learning as well. So that's really the end. And if we have a minute, I can show you the beginning, at least, of a video assignment. And that's also where it comes back to traditional ways of being and knowing. It actually is an element of storytelling. And this student, who is actually who was in residency just last month, allowed me to share her clip. So if we just can see that. She is Métis and she speaks about that in there. And yep, that's, if you can just pull it to the beginning. Oh. And they're about 3 to 4 minutes long, but I'll just show you the beginning to get an idea of what they do.
Hi, my name is Karina Chase. I'm from the Métis Nation, and my people come from a reserve outside of Quebec. On my Scottish side, they come from a community outside of Calgary, Alberta. I work in Aboriginal education in Burnaby as a counselor, and I am a mother to an amazing adolescent boy. Growing up, Métis had its own challenges, and I never understood until much later in my life. My mother's family history is weaved with threads of intergenerational trauma. Doge states in the Handbook of Conflict Resolution, Theory and Practice, page 41, cultural imperialism involves the universalization of dominant groups, experience, and cultures, establishing it as its norm. Colonization and residential school brought cultural genocide to my Métis people. Cultural imperialism is a force on a culture of less powerful people, and it is responsible for the breakdown of the Métis culture, losing its language, its
I know I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do and cut it short. It is part of the interest of time, but what you see even in just this beginning is that you get a sense of the person that is presenting this information. She draws a larger picture as well, speaking to her motivation for studying conflict analysis and management. And at the same time there, I know the sound wasn't too loud, but she also actually quotes from the readings and provides a reference and all of that. So blending all of those elements as well. There are 2 more minutes, but we also did want to leave some space for questions and answers. So I don't want to show the rest, but if any of you are interested, we can watch the end once we've wrapped up the session. But with that, I end my part, and maybe all of you can come back, and we'll open the floor to questions.